Hey everybody, today we're going to finally do a build video on the IBC pig feeder. You may have seen some pictures of it in the past, but this is the result of 3 years of R&D on this thing. Finally got a design that's worked really well in field trials over the last year, so we're ready to bring it out to the public and share it with you guys. This is a low-cost way to feed pigs on pasture that's highly portable. It can take being beat up by the pigs, moved with equipment, handles weather pretty well, and very importantly is modular. If you need to swap out a piece of it, you can. If you need to clean it out, you can break it apart and do so. There will be a link below in this video of a downloadable PDF of the plans. So if you want to support us here at FarmBuilder and what we're doing, feel free to hit that up, make that purchase. It'll make everything that you see in this video make a lot more sense should you want to build one of these on your own. So with that being said, let's get to it. So we'll do a quick walkthrough of the different components here before we start putting it together. This is a very detailed build. We've done a lot of trial and error on different configurations. So everything you see is precise to the dimensions that we're using. Everything's got a reason. We'll explain it more as we go. But this is some of the parts that you'll have. So you've got 1/2" bolts by 7s, 4 of those. 3/8 bolts, carriage bolts by 6, 4 of those. 8 3" by 4s. 2 ratchet straps. You need 3 of these longer, I think these are 3/16 decking screws, the real solid kind. Need 3 of those. Obviously, collection of washers and nuts. 2 12" bungee straps. All right, and these are different pieces of the guards that you'll see on the sides of the build as we go along. But these ones here are 24". This is 2" PVC ripped in half. There's 4 of those. You got these guys right here. 2 of them at 44, and you can see we've pre-drilled the holes in them for where they'll be attached. It'll make sense when you see it on the build. 6" PVC cut in half and then cut to 41 3/4, 3 holes in it. 4" PVC. These are 2 cut at 41 inches. Some of this stuff you're going to have to fabricate, or we're planning to have this stuff available on the website as well to purchase some of these more particular components. But this is 1/2" rebar welded into a T there on the end with a hole for a clip on that end. That'll make sense again later once you see it coming together. It's helpful if you have some extra IBC tanks around that you can cut up, but basically some kind of plastic. This is an 8" strip. Again, you'll see this come into play later. Like any kind of build, having a wide variety of screws is helpful, so I'm not going to go into huge detail on how many we use. Just have enough, and you'll see. We're using 3" decking screws. These bad boys right here, 1.5" lag screws. 4" structural screws. These are the heavier ones. Remember, this thing's being pushed around by pigs all day. Again, this is just a box of different kinds of screws. Good to have. So this is the lumber to construct the cradle part of the feeder, and you'll see as we put that together. Obviously, you don't need to use pressure treated. You can use something else if you're sawmilling your own lumber. If you're doing full dimension, obviously some of these measurements will be a little bit off, but you can figure that out. But we're using pressure treated because the thing's exposed to weather, sitting in the mud. It's got pigs around it all the time, like to scratch and push it around, get mud and water on it. This thing's built to be outdoors. All right, we'll get to the build. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is put together the box for the pan of our feeder. So we'll start by putting together the 48" 2x6s and the 29s. our box together here. It's square. So now we're just going to attach the plywood to the 2x6 box. So, again, it's not trim carpentry, it's for the pigs. And then we're going to go around and stitch this in with the 3-inch decking screws. All right, we got our pan together. This is really the first big step of the project. Next thing that we're going to do is attach our 4x4 skids to the bottom of this, and then we can go on to further steps after that. All right, so our 4x4s are 4 foot long. This is 32 inches, so we've got another 16 inches, so roughly 8 inches of overhang on each side. So we'll just mark those with a pencil. There. There. They're going to be located 3 inches in from each side. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a vital piece of information. The dimension that Jordan just mentioned to you of 3 inches is actually incorrect. Your skid should be located 1.5 inches from the edge. Do not make Jordan's mistake. All right, so we got our skids. This is what's in contact with the ground, and what is going to take a lot of the abuse. So we'll line those up roughly there and there, and then these will just get towed in with some screws to hold them in place. We're going to be putting those 1/2 inch bolts through these. Like that. Got 4x4s just tacked on. I'm going to flip this over. Actually drill it through from this side. I'm going to drill holes through here to attach our carriage bolts. You really can locate these bolts wherever you want, but just for the sake of the build, we will put them 4 inches in from the edge. Like that. Center them up, bore on through. All right, so we got our 1/2 inch carriage bolts by 7s, and we're going to put these from the bottom, put them in from this way, but once the feeder is oriented correctly, this will be coming from the bottom. The reason that we don't do it the other way is because you don't want the nut and the excess bolt coming out the bottom. If you should ever load this onto a trailer or a pickup truck or something, those are going to tear the heck out of it. That's why we put them in this way. A little bit of extra that's inside the pan doesn't bother the pigs at all. With that in place, now we'll flip it over, put washers and nuts on them, and we move on to the next step. You can get some of me doing stuff in between. That would be good. All right, now we're going to establish our center line in here, which is where we will start building out the frame part of the cradle that holds the IBC tank, and then locating some of our PVC components in here. So we're at 32 inches end to end, hopefully. Close enough. We'll hit that at 16. Square that up to the bottom. Put our line. Same thing on the other side. Pieces, and And these are what are the arms of the cradle. So they're going to be right on that center line. Basically just like that. And we're only going to tack them in place for right now until we kind of figure everything out where the good location is. But it'll look just like this. All right, so we've got both of our arms on. Before we put our carriage bolt in through here, we're going to install our top piece to make sure that they're aligned with each other. Then we'll be running a carriage bolt right through here to hold this together.
Well, then how come the power saws work?
And we got our 4 12-inch angled chunks. Those are going to go up in each corner as bracing. All right, so we got our angled pieces on, our braces. Now we'll put the bolts in our frame. Next step after that, we put in legs down the side. Okay, so these are going to be our 3/8 by 4s. Okay, so you're just going to center it up in here and put these puppies in. Now these bolts you want to put from the inside out for reasons that you'll see later. They will interfere with the inner mechanism of your feeder if they are put outside in. Washers and nuts. All right, you go ahead and finish both of these up there, buddy. All right, so we've got our 33.5-inch pieces. And those are going to mount the outside of the 4x4, and those should line up with that top corner of your angled piece. And we'll attach those on all 4 sides, and then throw the carriage bolt on through. And it's going to sit roughly like this and be flush on the bottom of your 4x4. We've got all of our posts on, and what we're going to do is put a 3/8 hole in these and put a 3/8 bolt through both the bottom and the top of this. This little extra tab that you can see here, you can just trim that off with a saw. Remember our 3/8 bolts. We have a longer one, so that's a 6-inch for the bottom. Actually, you can either put these from the inside out or the outside in. I probably put these from the inside out because the pigs have their hooves inside a lot more, and you just don't want them potentially hurting themselves. This one up here, definitely go from the outside in. Alright, so we'll put washers and nuts on these all the way around. We'll go on to the next step, getting close to getting the cradle done. Got all of our bolts in all the way around. The last piece of wooden structure here for the cradle is something that is optional, but I do it on some of our builds, and that is to add your 51-inch piece along here and the 32 along here as extra protection on your 2x6 to plywood, especially along here if you have tractor forks coming in to pick this up. Sometimes those could spear into here or separate your plywood. So sometimes it's better just to have a little bit extra there. Again, this is optional. Doesn't really affect the overall performance of the rest of the build, but we'll add them on to this one. All right, just like that. So now we'll throw a couple of structural screws in some key places, and then we'll be ready to start setting our PVC. We finished the structural part of the build here. This is what it's going to look like. This is what we call cradle. This is where the IBC tank will sit in this thing. But we're not at that point yet. We've got to put the inner mechanism of how the feed will actually drop into the trough and not spill out everywhere in the pasture. About the most critical element here, and what took me the longest time to develop. We got to put the guts of this thing in before we move on. So we'll start with our 6-inch PVC piece, 41 3/4 inches long. Let's see if she's going to fit. Oh, like a glove. All right, and that's basically just going to sit center in there. So you got the line that we've had before. Just kind of eyeball it in there. You can measure it if you want, but remember, pigs don't care that much. All right, that's sitting right there in the center. We already had the holes pre-drilled from before. And we'll grab those 3 long screws that we had, because they got to sink through this and anchor themselves in the bottom. Just like that. Sure we're still looking good. You're not sinking those in really hard because it'll just pull the PVC down. Just like that. So what this does is, as the feed falls out of the tank, which you'll see later, this is what sheds the feed over into the piggy eating areas. Okay? All right, so our next step, we have our rollers. This is what keeps the pigs from unloading the tank, as we would say. This is basically like an agitator that they have to mess with. So those, just lay them in there for now. That's where these guys come into play. So we've got to drill some holes in these support arms for these rollers to sit on. So we'll do that next. More and more tools come out as this goes on. All right, so this is a 3/4 inch drill bit. And it's 1/2 inch rebar. It's actually more like 5/8 with the ribs, but you want enough slack in the hole that it can slide in and out easily for when you need to clean this out. And we're going to locate these halfway up on this and about 1 inch high. So roughly right about there. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, got those holes drilled. Now we'll take our little rebar. The reason I'm using rebar like this is going to hold the weight of this and take the abuse, but also so that we can pull this out should this fill with water or mud, to be able to clean it out in the field. Just going to slide that in, run it through. And this is where it can get fun. You're by yourself. Put 2 in like that. Got our clips. So just put these in the end. All right, so what this does, the pigs are coming in, they're pushing on this, which is rattling your IBC tank, feed's dropping down here and going out to both sides. You want to make sure to have a little bit of room in here, because these will, get some feed in them, get impacted, things will move around, and you don't want these being tight to the point where the pigs can't actually move them around. That is the guts of the feeder. This is what took the longest time to get set and figured out correctly. So what we've got left is the PVC guards. We'll put them along the edge here. On the edge here, this prevents the pigs from wearing down the lumber over time. We found that just with the lumber, after about a year, the pigs are wearing this down really hard. So the PVC is what will keep your cradle intact for the long haul. All right, for these, we're using the 1.5 inch screw, something with a fatter head on it. That way it'll hold it on. Take these bad boys, lay up here, like that. And then we're just going to anchor it down. Hammering these screws down because you want the plastic to maintain its shape, so you're just snugging it up. Put one of these side guards on, basically like that. put the rest of them on, and I think our cradle will be done. Almost forgot. The last thing that you can add if your pigs like to unload the feeder is a piece of plastic. So if you got some old IBC tanks around or an extra one, you can just cut it up and make some plastic. I'm just gonna slide that in here, mark it off, cut it, screw it there, and down inside the pan to keep them from unloading feed out the side. So we'll throw that on here, then we'll be done with it. So, stage one complete. The cradle build is done, and it's getting a little bit late here this evening, so I'll do the tank build tomorrow and show you how to put it together. But this is what it looks like. This is where your pigs are going in to eat. So you can see this here is where their necks are going to rub. That keeps them from wearing your lumber down. Obviously, they turn the sides into scratching posts. So this is all designed to protect your lumber and your cradle for the long haul. But looking in here, this is what this part of it should look like. And if I haven't emphasized it yet, this is the key component to making any kind of feeder work, is how the feed drops out of your bulk tank into your feeding area. What we really like about this design is there's less of a bridge for water here in the feeding area to come up into your tank and cause issues. But if you do get a lot of rain, like in a hurricane, like we just did, I'll show you how to flip the tank out, which is super easy. And then you can also pull this rebar out and just take these tumblers right on out. It's super easy to clean out the feeding pan here. So that's it for tonight. Check back in tomorrow and we'll finish up this build.